네, 여러분 모두 착석을 부탁드립니다.
Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Now, because it's 2 p.m., we are going to begin the event. Good afternoon, everyone. We can feel the warmth of spring today. Thank you, everyone, for coming to the 2025 Library Day and Library Week. My name is Kyungmi Kim, and I'm honored to be the host of today's event. I can see that many participants are gracing today's event. Now, today's forums is held under the theme Libraries for All, Inclusive and Integrative Spaces. Today's libraries are evolving into central community hubs, places where people from different generations, social backgrounds, and cultures come together to communicate, learn, and grow. As urbanization and digitalization deepen social isolation and disconnection, libraries are increasingly recognized as vital platforms for social inclusion and connection. And some people even say the opposite of loneliness is a library. Through today's forum, we aim to explore how libraries can contribute to communities' restoration and social integration. Let us begin this journey today as we open the door to new possibilities for libraries that belong to everyone. Today's conference will be in the order of the proceeding. First, the keynote speech will be given with the title of In an Era of Inclusion and Integration, Addressing Social Isolation and the Role of Librarians. After a short 10-minute break, we will continue with the following themes presentations. Number 1, libraries as spaces for community engagement. Number 2, combating loneliness and social isolation through libraries. Number 3, social inclusion and the evolving role of libraries. After all the presentations, we will take a 15-minute break, followed by a panel discussion and Q&A session. We kindly ask for your continued attention and active participation. Before we begin, I would like to introduce our distinguished guests and speakers joining us today. Please welcome them with a big round of applause as I call out their name. First, we have Mr. Hee-Yun Yoon, Chair of the Presidential Committee on National Libraries. Thank you. Next, we have Sun Dul-jung, the Professor of Social Welfare at Ewha Women's University. Next, we have Maria McCauley, Director of Cambridge Public Library, USA. Next, we have Deok-hyun Jang, Professor of Library and Information Science at Busan National University. And next, we have Won-sik Shim, Professor of Library and Information Science at Sungkyunkwan University. And next, we have Seol-hee Cho, Director of Library Policy Planning Division from Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism. And not only them, but once again, I express my gratitude for everyone to coming to today's event. Now, in today's event, we are also holding this event as a hybrid format, both on-site and online. You can also join us in real time via YouTube on the channel 412 Library Day. Simultaneous interpretation is available for this event. On-site participants are kindly asked to use the provided interpretation devices, while online participants can select their preferred language channel on YouTube.
Interpretation services, please use the receiver at your table. Channel 1 is for Korean and channel 2 for English. And if you're joining us online, you can choose your preferred language on YouTube channel. 네, 그리고 이 행사 자료집은
Furthermore, the event materials can be accessed through the following. Go to the Presidential Committee on National Libraries website, Information Sharing and Resources, or visit the Library Day official website under the Notices section. Now, before we begin, we will have a welcome address. Please join me in welcoming Chair Hee-Yun Yoon of the Presidential Committee on National Libraries to the stage with a big round of applause. Please welcome him with warm hand. Hello everyone, I am Yoon Hee-Yun. This week is the Library Week, and next Saturday is the Day of Library. Now, why did the country designate it the Week of Library and the Day of Library? Well, actually, the Library Day is a legal holiday, and it has two implications. First is that library has to strengthen its role within the society, and also the library's direction for the social contribution. And the second implication is that Library Day is also the birthday for all of us, which means that the library has been accomplished by the pride of the experts who are here today. Now, over the past for four times, the library committee is going to hold the events. So today is the international forum, and tomorrow we have the hackathon contest in the afternoon to gather various ideas. And then we have the official anniversary on the day of the library, and on next Friday, we are going to gather various experts from libraries and publication fields, and those experts will discuss policies to strengthen library culture in Korea. Recently, there has been wildfires breaking out over the past week in Gyeongbuk and Gyeongnam province, and there has been a massive destructions, and also one of the victims of the wildfire is actually me. My home in the region has burned down, and all the mountains surrounding that region was burned down. And I visited there 2 weeks ago, and I was really saddened. And also, we have the elderly who are living in the rural regions, and I've heard that they had difficulties receiving the text message about the disasters and the emergency. And I think this is one of the examples that shows the digital gap that we're witnessing nowadays. Therefore, communication, empathy will be the vital role for the libraries. And we also have this digital divide issues right now. So we have to think about how we can address this divide. And in many aspects, we are currently witnessing this divide in many fields, but we also need to think about how we can address this gap, and I think the wildfire case has raised our attention on this gap issue. So today's event will be really meaningful in that regard. First of all, we have Professor Chung Sun-dor from Social Welfare Department at Ewha Women's University as the keynote lecturer. So from the perspective of the expert in the social welfare field, what will be the role of libraries, such as issues like the social minorities and marginalized? So from the perspective of the welfare experts, I will look forward to your insights. And then we have 3 speakers for the theme presentations. First, we have Ms. Maria Macaulay, the director of Cambridge Public Library. And she was nominated for the next chair of the American Library Association. And she is a renowned expert, and she has a numerous experience on site in the American library fields, as well as the libraries in general. And then we have Miss Andrea Wickfield from the University of Sheffield, the UK. She will join us via online. Lastly, we have Mr. Deok-hyun Jang from Busan National Universities. For several years, he has been focusing on the multicultural society as well as the marginalized group. I'm looking forward to his meaningful presentation. And at the last part of our event, Mr. Won-sik Sim will be the moderator for the panel discussion. He's also one of the commissioner member of our committee. So including the keynote speaker, we have a total of 4 speakers in today's event. Now, within the boundary of library, there's this gap that we've been witnessing. So we have the leaders within the library sectors, but we also have experts from outside of the field of libraries. So with those experts in and out of our expertise, we will together think and discuss how libraries should unfold as we move forward. Currently, the social situation is at chaos, but regardless of that, thank you everyone for coming to today's event. Thank you.
네, 위원장님.
Thank you very much for your opening remarks, Chair. So this will provide a good opportunity to think of the future of libraries. Thank you very much for sharing the programs as well for today. And now, we will now officially begin the 2025 Library Day International Forum. Let me invite the keynote speaker. The keynote speaker will be Professor Sundul Jung, and from the Department of Social Welfare at Ewha Women's University. Please welcome him with a big hand. Hello, everyone. I'm Sundul Jung, professor at Ewha Women's University. The Day of Library, it is meaningful, I think. So I'm an expert actually outside the library. I'm joining this event to discuss about loneliness and the social isolation. I'm here to discuss my perspectives on this meaningful event. Yes, I have studied these two topics, loneliness and social isolation. And recently, the Ministry of Welfare established a plan to prevent solitary deaths. I also joined the project with the ministry as a key researcher. I realized the severity of social isolation and loneliness. I think everyone should be involved to tackle this issue in our society. But in the past, I think we missed the importance of libraries in our society and the role of the libraries in mitigating social isolation. So today I'm going to share my perspectives on this main topic. And these are the contents. First, I will touch upon the issue of loneliness and isolation in the era of inclusion and integration, and the causes of loneliness and isolation, and what would be the solutions. I will wrap up my presentation with the solutions. First, loneliness and isolation. Okay, we can divide the concepts, the definitions of loneliness and isolation. The loneliness is a psychological state. Okay, this kind of state that arises when one's perspective social network is smaller or less satisfying than expected. So we call this psychological state loneliness. You may think you have about 10 people close to you. However, only 2 people out of 10, if only 2 people are helpful to you, you feel lonely. What about being alone? So loneliness is about a psychological state, but social isolation is about a physical aloneness. Whether you have someone that you can turn to when you need them. So that state can be called social isolation. Now, what about the relation between these two, loneliness and the social isolation? You can see that disconnection of a kind of social disconnection, but loneliness is subjective and social isolation is objective. Of course, both stem from the lack of social connection. So a research center in Seoul City, provided this drawing, this infographic. You can see the loneliness has a bigger circle and social isolation circle is smaller. So psychological state of loneliness is bigger, about 62%, and the social isolation is about 13.6%. And solitude, aloneness, and loneliness. Actually, we may interpret the solitude in a different way. Being alone, you can feel lonely, but solitude is a chosen state of being alone. You may enjoy the state of being alone, and you can have or you can produce the positive emotional outcomes. So that is why sometimes we say that, okay, we are enjoying solitude to think of a more positive state. So solitude is not necessarily a negative word. But and more recently, the Seoul City made a division or department to respond to the matter of solitude. And at the time, I do not want to have the title Solitude Department. However, they said that they named it Solitude Department because the meaning of the solitude is somewhat positive. So these are the main differences between, the among solitude, aloneness, and the loneliness. So regarding loneliness and isolation, how these two are perceived by people. So from our research center, we are running a research center about some intergenerational integration. That we have conducted this survey biannually, supported by the Ministry of Education. And this is also the part of the Social Science Korea. We have studied this topic for the past about 15 years. So you can refer to the result of the research, the ESOL. It shows the level of the loneliness. According to the surveys, you can see the elderly populations report the highest levels of loneliness across all years, and higher the levels of loneliness after COVID-19. And the elderly group, compared to other age groups, you can see higher bar graphs. And the state of loneliness, a state of isolation. Countries from around the world, they compare the data of isolation to have more objective perspective on this main issue. So those over 19 years old, okay, this is a survey result with a question about there is anyone to ask for help when ill or depressed. So in the age group between the 19 to 29, about 24% said that they have no one to ask for help. However, those over 60, they said about 40%. 40% of them said that they have no one to turn to. So you can see that we are seeing more serious isolation with the older age group. So compared to other age groups, the percentage of those over 60 is higher. So this is a graph showing this kind of a trend by life stage. The childhood and adolescence, that's the first stage, and the second stage is the young and middle adulthood, and the last one is the old age stage. In the old age stage, you can see a higher isolation. Okay, let me provide the reasons of this trend later. So social isolation, okay, it is possible to compare the data of social isolation with other countries. We have a global data like this, whether we have someone to help us, regarding some house chores, or is there anyone we can turn to, when we feel lonely. Now, on the left side, you can see the highest bar graph. This is Korea. However, it is the UK who gained attention about this issue, who drew the attention about this issue. Where's UK? Yes, UK is here. The score of the UK is lower than that of Korea. However, the UK government has already, come up with a policy response regarding this issue. So local government like Seoul City already initiated some responsive measures to tackle this issue. And now, the causes of loneliness and isolation by life stage. There are a wide range of reasons behind this loneliness and isolation by age group. In the youth group, these are the reasons, whether they have some fear of failure. That was the biggest reasons of the loneliness and isolation. Maybe it is relevant to the unemployment of youth. And the middle-aged groups, okay, they will face some retirement period, and so they may have some fear of unemployment and lower income. And older age group, the elderly, they will have no source of income. And health deterioration may occur in this age group. So first, the youth group. I'm sure that you have heard of reclusive and withdrawn youth. There are about 540,000 reclusive young people nationwide. That is a serious issue. Many of them say that it is really difficult to find a job. Compared to the older generations, they have feared in having a better job. That's why we have a high rate of reclusive youth and high unemployment in their 20s. Between 20 to 29, you can see the highest level of unemployment. What about the suicidal thoughts or attempts of those withdrawn youth? If the period of withdrawal is longer, you can see the higher rate of suicidal thoughts and attempts. So some social intervention is required to prevent these types of suicidal attempts. And the middle-aged group, as they have a fear regarding the job, so kind of job insecurity is the main issue of those middle-aged groups. You can refer to the graphs. The red graph shows the trend of US and the blue one is from the Korea. You can compare the tenure. In the US, there's no official tenure period. However, we do have it. That is why you can see some differences in the graphs. And on the right side, it shows temporary workers, the portion of temporary workers. Okay, of course, the temporary workers will suffer from the job insecurity. And in the age group between the 55 to 64, you can see the Korean Republic of Korea has the highest bar. So a bit different from those in their 40s and those over 55. And I also referred to this, the bar graphs. What are the reasons for feeling lonely in daily lives? The blue bar graphs, it shows financial insecurity. Financial insecurity. So financial insecurity is one of the biggest reasons of loneliness and isolation. And in the older age group, many of them are likely to live alone. So the one-person households, the portion of one-person households in the elderly group is over 37%. That is one of the biggest reasons. And the health deterioration is one of the, this is also an important factor. So, I mean, those living alone and those living with others, you can compare some different data. Regarding the health state, those living alone are showing the more serious health state. So, age-friendly environment. The age-friendly environment may include libraries, barrier-free or some kind of open space for everyone. If we do have a better space for all, you can have a lower level of loneliness and isolation. Okay, they may develop sense of community through the spaces like libraries. So social support, please refer to the Venn diagram on the right side. So being part of a community is a good solution. To prevent loneliness or isolation. And there's kind of age-related stigma. So in our society in particular, okay, we think that the elderly, they are no longer productive economically, and that may cause a serious loneliness. And what are the results of the loneliness and isolation?
결국은 건강의 문제를
Now, what kind of problems do they occur?
약간 이제 신체적인 질환이고 아래
On the top, you can see physical illness, and then on the bottom, you can see mental illness. So, in the end, loneliness, when it comes to public health, is important for the health issues.
는 것을 WHO에서도 주목을 하고 있습니다.
And that has been mentioned by the WHO. Now, for the youth, they feel emotional instability leading to social reclusiveness. And then, as for economic issues, we have the unemployment issue as well.
노인까지 될 수 있다. 이 사례를
And this can lead to the adults in the middle aged and the senior citizens feeling poverty. So, therefore, it is essential to prevent the loneliness and poverty issues starting from the youth. And if you look at the social and economic cost, because many youth give up their economic activities, you can see here that the cost accounts for 6.7 trillion won every year. And for social economic cost, it costs around 1.5 billion won per person every year. And as for the middle-aged groups, because they have less opportunities for employment, there is a great possibility that these people will face poverty in their senior age. And not only that, many issues such as retirement, living expenses, and marriage expenses for their offsprings could lead to economic difficulties. And in the end, it will cause loneliness as well. And the biggest age group that accounts for loneliness is the athletes. So this kind of issue can lead to health issues as well, and it has been shown that the male people living alone takes the biggest account for the loneliness. And here you can see that the loneliness, the situation in Korea. Now, if you look at here in this graph, you can see that those in their 60s is bigger than other age group. But if we add up these two groups, they account for 53.9% of the total loneliness. So you can see that the middle-aged men takes up the biggest account. And there are also some research analysis that athletes are also facing loneliness. Then what are the solutions? Well, the solution was indicated by WHO with these three big circles here. Now, first of all, this small circle symbolizes the individual's issues. And then the next circle implies the regional and community strategies. And then the biggest circle represents the social strategies. So there are solutions for each, and I'll explain about them with the next slides. So here on the slide, I explained about the prevention and the management of loneliness depending on the age groups. So like I've mentioned earlier, for the youth, their foremost priority would be the employment and isolation issues. And for the middle-aged and the elderly, you can see here that the early old age groups faces physical and mental health and isolation and loneliness. And for those in the late old age, they face loneliness and isolation. And for the second place, the late old age people also face issue of housing. So for the youth, in order to improve the problems of the youth, we have to support the employment of the younger generation. And here, we can provide shared office for the youth to get ready for the employment and also provide a venue for the youth to exchange information.
물 해소
And also, in order to address the youth's loneliness and self-blame, we have to also provide them coachings and counselings, which can be done by the libraries. And as for the middle-aged groups, once again, we have to provide another opportunity for their re-employment. So the middle-aged adults can choose between re-employment or acquiring new skills to make shifts in their careers. And also, we can provide contents and online networking services for the middle-aged groups to support them with turnovers and starting new business. And for the sake of social network, we can also provide books for the middle-aged groups. And by group discussions, the middle-aged groups can find their own solutions and find their own efforts to address the issue. And earlier, I mentioned that the single person household of male faces the biggest risk. So they would need a venue where they can gather together and have discussion. So for these people, the Seoul Metropolitan Government is offering the 50+ center for the middle-aged men living alone. And looking at the senior age, they face the issue of health. So in light of that, we have to provide health information to the senior citizens to enhance their health information literacy. And also to prevent loneliness, we can provide intergenerational interactions for the senior citizens.
고립시키지 않기.
So in order to prevent the isolation of the senior citizens, the postman could visit their homes, and also in community and residential areas, we can build cafes to boost social interactions and exchanges among the senior citizens. Now, in the community level, we can also provide some solutions. First, we have to raise the accessibility of the people for close contact with others. Now, in the case of library, it can also become the venue for providing accessibility. And also, we have to think about how to raise the sense of community within the region. And earlier, I mentioned about the city friendly to senior citizens. So in this city, the communication is the foremost priority as well as the space. So the community residents can come together. So we have to offer the venue where they can communicate with one another. So establishing such community and venues would be crucial. And from the nation and the society, we also need to eradicate age discrimination, such as prejudice and hatred against the elderly. And not only that, we also discriminate young people. So ageism should be eradicated from our society. Also, we have to prevent inequality in terms of society and economy. And also, we have to address digital divide. And this implies that the cyberspace is important as well as the offline space. So on the right, you can see this example of this robot. And we distributed this robot to the elderly living in rural areas. And do you know the name of this robot? Here on the bottom. Yes, its name is Hyodori and Hyosuni. So we call these two robots Hyodori. And the elderly treats these robots as if they are their grandchildren. It gives them a mental comfort as well. And on the very right, this robot is named Pepper to give a psychological therapy to the people. And these robots could be one of the measures to curb loneliness for the elderly. Now, lastly, I would like to talk about the role of libraries to address the isolation and loneliness. In fact, it is still questionable whether the libraries could provide support for employment, but still, it can provide information via online for the youth to get information about the employment. Also, we have librarians who can provide tailored information to the youth who are looking for jobs. In particular, younger generation could gain information in the libraries and also build connections with others. Now, to support communication and exchange, as an example, here I brought up the Seoul Youth Support Center, run by the Sinan Card, and they created the Welfare Library for Youth. By benchmarking such a library, we can provide digital devices and venues for exchange. With that, I believe the younger generation can have social connection, and within the library, we can also create a space where we can respond to the loneliness and isolation of the youth. So targeting the younger generation, I think we will be able to address their loneliness as well as providing book therapy to the young people. And also, the Seoul Metropolitan Government also runs a special place for the youth. And I visited there actually, but there was nothing special there, only a place for a cup of tea. So I think libraries should be the place where we can provide the youth with the venue to make connection with others. And what are the roles of the libraries to support these middle-aged groups? Well, first of all, we can provide information for the career shift and re-employment. And lifelong education is also crucial for the middle-aged people. And this could be connected with the jobs shift. And this could be done by the libraries.
도서
And next, library could also provide information for the re-employment of the middle-aged people, as well as the young people as well. Furthermore, we also need to invigorate the social network, as well as providing book therapies. So, customized to the middle-aged group's characteristics, I think we can provide such support. And we can also run cultural programs based on the needs of the middle-aged groups. Now we come to the last slide. Then what are the roles of libraries for the senior citizens? So before I came up to the stage, I met many experts on libraries. Now in our university, we also have the Department of Library and Information. And I once gave advices for the programs for age-friendly libraries. And I strongly believe that libraries could be a friendly space for the senior citizens, and I believe that many elderly are using libraries. In particular, library could become a space that penetrates through all generations, including the elderly and the youth. Likewise, as I mentioned earlier, we can provide health information, books and information to the elderly. And also, we would be able to provide information regarding the leisure activities for the senior citizens. And also to prevent loneliness and lonely death, maybe we could come up with book clubs and discussion groups for the senior citizens. And these kind of programs could integrate all generations. And I have experience of running a book clubs with all these age groups, and I got a feedback from the senior citizens that it was really helpful. And also centering around the elderly, we can also provide a book delivery service and providing other books. And also maybe we could visit their homes so that we could check their house. And now this comes to the end of my lecture. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor, for your speech. Now we have about 5 minutes left until we end this session. Now, if any of you have questions to the professor, maybe we can receive 1 or 2 questions.
손 한번 들어주시겠어요?
If you have questions, please raise your hand, and our staff members will hand over the microphone. Maybe I was too fast with my presentation. I mistakenly take the time. I believe that we also have panel discussion later on, but if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
질문이 있으실까요? 질문.
Do you guys have any questions? Okay, in that case, then I guess the professor gave us a 5-minute of additional break. Please give her a big round of applause. Thank you very much. So loneliness and social isolation is not an issue of an individual, but a social problem. And to address that matter, she mentioned about the role of library for each generation. Thank you for your presentation once again. Now, we'll take a short 10-minute break. The thematic presentations will resume at 2:55 p.m. So we have around 15-minute break. If you go outside the lobby, you can find a tree of wisdom. And on the tree, you can find the slogan, "We can bury something in the library." So please participate in this event, the Tree of Wisdom. Now we'll resume at 2:55. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed the break. This is a 2025 International Library Day Forum. Now we are going to begin the thematic session. We have invited 3 speakers from home and abroad, and then it will be followed by the Q&A session. The first speaker is Ms. Maria Magali, Director of Cambridge Public Library, USA. She's going to make a presentation on the libraries as spaces for community and engagement. She was selected as the chair of the American Library Association. I think that this is the first spot for her to visit. I mean, the first foreign country to visit after the appointment.
안녕하세요. It is delightful to be here with you today from Cambridge, Massachusetts. Has anybody been over to Cambridge or Boston? Yay, a few people. You're all welcome to come anytime. Boston is a wonderful place to visit. It's very walkable, and there's a subway. And then Cambridge is just right across the river, and there's also a subway there as well. And we are home to 7 public libraries in 6 square miles. So we're very fortunate that the city of Cambridge loves its libraries. And then, of course, Harvard University, the Massachusetts Institute for Technology, and Lesley University all also have many different beautiful libraries in our library ecosphere. And then the Boston Public Library has 27 libraries and a beautiful main research library as well. You heard a little bit about me, and I've been at the Cambridge Public Library for the past 8 years. Prior to that, I was in California at the Santa Monica Public Library, where I directed the library system in Santa Monica, where there were 5 libraries. And I've been a director of libraries for 13 years, so I am a practitioner, and I also have studied libraries too as a scholar, and I have my PhD from Simmons University. I want to thank Chairman Yoon Hee-yoon and Tai Kyung Kim for inviting me to speak today. It is really quite an honor to stand before such bright minds working toward creating inclusive, unifying library spaces and services. We serve 118,000 people at the Cambridge Public Library, and our mission is to welcome all, inspire minds, and empower community. And our vision is a Cambridge where everyone has equitable opportunities to learn, people live their very best lives, and democracy thrives. And in Cambridge, which is, I would say, resource-rich, there is an equity gap. And I think part of that is because the city of Cambridge has a commitment to, for example, low-income housing, but also because of just some structural situations historically in the United States where, some people have more resources, such as housing, such as owning homes, and then for other people, it's very difficult. And I think especially in a place like Cambridge where housing prices are very high, it can be hard for people, for example, to get into the market. This is an image of our beautiful main library, and this section is our contemporary wing. And this is the inside of our reading room. So we have an old part of the library, which was constructed in 1890. It's Richardsonian style. And then the new part, which we call the glass building, and that was built about 15 years ago. At the Cambridge Public Library, we welcome 960,000 visitors per year and circulate over 1.8 million volumes. We host more than 3,900 free community programs across all of our branches. And I would say that our community programs are what helps to engage and activate and bring people community members together. I was telling some people over lunch that there have been many challenges that community members are facing presently in the United States, and of course, global challenges as well. Whether that's a growing socioeconomic divide, a widening gap in literacy, or increased challenges to intellectual freedom. The missions of libraries are, I would say, currently under duress. Libraries are much more than are needed. They're more important than ever for cultivating community and connection. And I would think that these are our best hopes at combating the epidemic of loneliness and division sown by these challenges. And it's vital for us to think about libraries as that place of community and connection and hub for civic engagement. And similar to the last presenter and speaking about loneliness and Korea, in 2023, their loneliness as an epidemic was declared in the United States. And so we also are struggling with some of those same issues of loss of connection, feeling isolated, and feeling alone. And it's interesting because part of it is there were some correlations. So for example, about if people are living in poverty, they often feel more isolated. If people are in their 20s and they're trying to get a handle on what they're doing with their lives, sometimes they feel more alone. Or as seniors, sometimes they feel more alone as well. This is just this extra slide I put in because we have a relatively new Korean language collection. This happened a few years ago, and I thought you might be interested in seeing this. We have several language collections in our collection, but this one is featured on the second floor of the library. A few months ago, a Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioner visited the Cambridge Public Library and really saw the welcoming nature of what we do. And they said, "The Surgeon General has declared an epidemic of loneliness. I saw the cure today." I couldn't agree more with this commissioner because there are so many opportunities in our libraries to connect with each other. For example, I often say that our library system it is like a choose your own adventure. You could go to a local branch library, just walk to it after school, on the weekends, and everybody knows your name there. The librarians are going to know you. You're going to run into your neighbors. It has that real community vibe. You could choose to come to the main library and have a quiet space, and you could even go into the all-quiet reading room where not even laptops are allowed. Or you could meet up with a friend and go see a lecture and then have a discussion about it afterwards on our patio. Or you could bring a grandchild to a children's program where they're doing a sing-along in the children's room. Or teenagers, they come right over from the high school. It's part of an open campus, and they use their own teen space, or they're also invited to use any of the spaces throughout the library. We have many different reasons that community members come and use our libraries: voting, meeting with different kinds of health professionals. It's a very vibrant place. Loneliness isn't the only thing that libraries help to cure. In fact, as you know, libraries make it their mission to seek out challenges, societal challenges, and become the necessary balm. And whether that's addressing the growing digital divide, and I heard some people speak about that already today, the STEM education gap. So in Cambridge, for example, we have lots of STEM industry and biotech industry companies, but students especially Black and brown middle school students and high school students aren't testing as highly as other students, and so they often get left behind from getting jobs in that competitive industry. And the library is really working on solutions with other community partners on that, and we're seeing some real great strides, like these kids going off to colleges. The library is also there for accessible open spaces. And I just want to mention a little bit about our libraries in Cambridge, because we want to make it amenity friendly. So you come into the library, people are welcoming you, and sometimes, even just that look up and saying hello means so much to a community member who hasn't seen anybody for a week. Some people do not talk to another person for a whole week. So when you're coming in, people are saying hello, hello, that means a lot to a lot of people. You can, let's see, we have it's called MamaVas, so you can pump and nurse in a pumping pod. So a lot of people are co-working at the library, and they need a place to be able to take care of their daily life situations. In Cambridge, we take accessibility really seriously, including all gender friendliness. So we have a bathroom in every library that's all gender, and we just completed renovating our main library to include an all gender restroom that's available all the hours that our libraries are open. We have free menstrual products as well, and that's really been a movement, I would say, in the United States over the past, very recently, I would say maybe 2 years, to help people who don't have money to be able to buy feminine products. So all those amenities. There are public libraries that provide food for people, teens especially, after school. So sometimes we buy pizza, but we're not one of the libraries who's able to provide continual food. But some places are very creative in that. I wanted to show some creative solutions that libraries are coming up with to solve a myriad of issues in the United States. In the Public Library Association's Public Services for Strong Communities report, the top 3 community needs that libraries in the United States are addressing fall within the core service areas: 1, literacy and educational achievement; digital equity. Digital equity is a real big issue because, as I think all of you are aware, nowadays to apply for any kind of job, you have to be able to use technology and access technology. And if you want to apply for any kind of social services, often you need to do that online. And then the third area is civic engagement. And I really think that that third area touches on that community engagement piece. So all of these needs require a dedicated space for community building and connections. And the Public Library Association identified some of the most important services that libraries can provide to address community needs. Election services. In the United States, 68% of libraries offer election services, including voter registration, ballot drop-off, or serving as a polling place. 99% of libraries have summer reading programs for children, teens, and adults. I'm assuming that many of your libraries also have reading programs. And book clubs, as was mentioned earlier. 59% of libraries in the United States have services that support adult learning and literacy for GED and diploma students. So if you haven't finished high school, you can study to take an exam to get that high school diploma. And 46% offer services for English language learners, such as English for Second Languages, ESL. 78% of libraries provide job and career services, and 24% have workforce development programs. 98% of libraries have at least one community partnership. And I think many have multiple community partnerships. I think these numbers, they paint a striking picture of the need for community-centered programs and of our library's comprehensive response. But what's even more striking is the tangible, positive impact that these programs and resources are having on patrons every day. And here are a few examples. The State of America Libraries Report highlights that the Las Vegas, and I think somebody in the crowd has been to Vegas, County Clark Library's digital equity solution, Clark Library District launched a cell phone lending program. And I know cell phones, everybody has a cell phone, Korea, but in Las Vegas, not everybody has a cell phone. And this was an approach, it was an innovation to provide access to needed services and social connection. The Clark Library District provided more than 400 smartphones to unhoused people, offering them a lifeline to family support systems and critical social services. And each phone had multiple social service provider contacts already pre-programmed in the phone. So people could access to food supports, healthcare, housing, and other general services. And also library apps too. So I was talking to somebody about Libby, online books, that kind of thing, the catalog. Library resources help people gain the technology, training, skills, and experiences to thrive in our economy. And I think that is an example of, a pretty unusual and innovative approach to helping people who really needed that extra help. Some other areas related to health and social services. Another key area is in response to the pandemic, Cleveland, Ohio. Has anybody been to Cleveland? Okay, in the middle of not exactly in the middle of the country, the northeastern part, but not on the coast. They had to pause for non-emergency. A lot of people had to pause for non-emergency evictions, meaning they couldn't go to court, they couldn't deal or move forward evictions. However, when the evictions resumed, more than 18,200 evictions were filed in the city. So evictions are when people get kicked out of their housing. The city's eviction filing rate was 6%, or nearly 6,600 filings over a 12-month period. So it was really an urgent issue that wasn't being dealt with because people couldn't necessarily get to court. So the Cleveland Public Library, they opened 4 neighborhood housing court kiosks at branches in the city. And this was in partnership with the local court. And they are video conferencing kiosks, and people can register or they can just walk in to register. And that this is a way for them to get hearings for their evictions versus going into court. The library, as you know, is a trusted place, and it's a free place, so it's a little bit easier in a lot of ways. So I think that also is just a wonderful example of being a place where community can get resources and to be a community space for people. Oh, you can see on the right, that's what it looks like, very simple setup. And then for accessibility, many libraries are doing different kinds of projects for accessibility. The Medina County, also in Ohio, they got a national grant. I think it was from ALA or PLA. And this was a small rural communities grant. Oh, it's from ALA. And they were able to install hearing loops technology. So this helps with people who are using hearing aids. And You would think that all libraries would have this technology, but many small rural libraries don't. And many, I would say, actually, probably if you did a whole study on this, probably a lot of big systems also don't have them in all of their community spaces. Food and housing help. Many libraries are also food drop-off sites. I'm curious, and you all can fill me in later if this also happens in libraries in Korea. And an example of this is the Spartanburg County in South Carolina. It is very highly densely populated, and there's a lot of people living below the poverty line. So the library started a Bags of Hopes initiative. And this is where wonderful people, community members come together. And this includes library staff and volunteers. And people drop off food and hygiene products. And then these are packed up and delivered to partner organizations across the county. So that includes food pantries, soup kitchens, community centers, and other nonprofits. And so here is an example of a librarian in South Carolina who is holding one of those Bags of Hopes. I just love how creative many libraries are. In 2023, this library system donated more than 740 gallon-sized zipper storage bags worth of items, 47 large sacks, and 16 boxes of food and supplies that were too big to fit into the bags. I wanted to share some local examples as well. So we really see ourselves in Cambridge as being that connector and being the nexus, the hub, and the heart of our communities. And we do all kinds of things. So this is a quote that somebody put on. We get these wonderful compliments that sometimes we try to gather. And I would say it's even more important now because statewide and federally, we need to bring these stories forward as we're doing our advocacy work for funding. But this person, they said, this was an older adult patron, and they thanked us for creating a wonderful space for the community to gather and strengthen neighbor-to-neighbor connections. She said, I love that you have encouraged the libraries to find creative ways to reach out to the public and make the library such a user-friendly location. As a senior citizen, I am especially happy to have a place to visit whenever I feel the need to leave the house. And we have a librarian who's an adult service librarian who studied gerontology, has her master's degree in gerontology, and she designs programs specifically for people, and actually age 55 plus, so it's a very, open for people who are, I would say, middle years and up. And we offer lots of different kinds of programs on things like trust, how to form your trust. Because I think that in the United States, a lot of people think that only wealthy people should be doing estate planning, when really everybody should be doing estate planning and preparing for that time when our relatives or others will, have to take on, or if you want to pass assets along to others. And we have things like death cafes. That's something that many libraries do nowadays, where people can learn the science of what it's actually like to die, the biological process. And we have programs, we partner with an national organization on creative aging and the arts, where we were trained in ageism and working with elders and bringing in professional artists, professional teaching artists, to do anything from improv to creative writing to memoir writing to drawing to poetry. And rather than elders sticking macaroni on, on pieces of paper. It's actually, they're developing skills. Everything is completely funded through our Cambridge Public Library Foundation. And I would say that it's a very meaningful series for everybody involved, because not only do they come in and they learn a new skill that maybe they've had a desire to paint and never been able to learn to paint, but they also form a friendship group through the process of taking these classes. We also work with people who are wellness or well-being experts who do things like nature walks and exercises classes for elders as well. And we have multi-generational programs as well, and programs from the littlest of folks too. So we even give out bags, baby bags, to people who have just given birth. Anybody who's has a baby and lives in Cambridge, they will get a bag of board books sent to them from the library and our partners in the city, because we want them to know that it's really important to start reading to your baby right away. And some people don't know that. Some people just assume, oh, my baby can't talk, I don't need to read to them right now. We want people to have that early literacy experience so that the parents know how to support their child, and then the kids have their very best shot at having a successful school education and planting those seeds of literacy very early. We also have a program called 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten, and it's to encourage young kids and their parents to have those kids read 1,000 books before they start kindergarten. And then they get to check off on their bag, I've done 50 books, and then they come back and they get some kind of little prize for doing that. And then they get a t-shirt and books along the way as well. This is our first floor, and we have a beautiful park in front of it. And you can see here, this is, we have stand-up places or flexible. We also have seats there too if people want higher banks. This first floor is, it can be loud. There are cafe tables as well. We allow people to eat in parts of the library. This is an example of our teen room, and it's super popular, only for teens, unless adults and others want to come and grab some young adult literature. We work with community partners. So on the left here, this is our Community Cooks program, where we bring in local chefs to do demos with our induction stovetop cooking cart. And we also work with the Office of Sustainability to tell people about induction stoves and why that is a green choice, a sustainable choice. And we've hosted 14 different chefs so far in celebration of moments like Black History Month, Haitian Flag Day, Pride, and more. And then our STEAM program, this is our maker space at the main library, and we do STEAM programming, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math across all of our libraries, but our makerspace really is a point of pride. And then we work with a nonprofit organization called Innovators for Purpose, and they teach our STEAM Academy every day after school, working with middle school and high school, very diverse students. These kids are learning design thinking. During the pandemic, they learned how to do augmented reality with the founders of Hoverlay, and they created an exhibit outside where it was physical, where you could see it, and then you could hover your phone over and see them in doing augmented reality with their reactions of the pandemic. And then this was around the time when George Floyd was murdered in the United States, and their reactions, how they felt about that as well. And these kids are going off to college to pursue STEM careers. So 8 in this current year's cohort, all of them are going off to school, and 2 of them got into Ivy League schools. This is an example of our tech bar. So the digital equity work, we actually have a team of digital equity specialists who are committed to providing that access and then also teaching the skills to be able to flourish in the area of technology. And then our social work program. So we were the very first library system in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to hire a licensed social worker. That program has just opened our eyes up and has been a model for many libraries in Massachusetts about how essential our social workers are and what a natural partner they are with our libraries. We see all of humanity in our public libraries in the United States, and a lot of people who are dealing with various kinds of trauma. And our social workers, they help not only our patrons with some direct service and referrals, but they also are a huge training partner to our staff members who are often, struggling with how to deal with very difficult patron situations sometimes. So you saw a little bit about Cambridge, you heard about the United States, and I just want to touch on the IFLA, International Federation of Library Associations and Institutions. They've identified 7 global library trends in their trend report. And I think that this really, what they have here makes a lot of sense. So you can take a look at all of these, but the first one and the last one I think are going to call out because knowledge practices, they're changing. And we have to think about opportunities and challenges for equity in knowledge systems. And then the last is that people are seeking community connections, and spaces to share are key. And libraries, really play a pivotal role, I think, in especially that latter one. People will always seek community connections, but the libraries can help to facilitate that. And they can provide this inclusive, welcoming space and the expertise, right? All of you provide that expertise to facilitate not only that community connection, but also knowledge creation. I want to close by saying that I know how important it is for us to convene, share our stories, and brainstorm creative solutions. And I want to encourage you to keep on brainstorming creative solutions to the challenges, facing the library profession and facing this epidemic of loneliness. Amidst a plague of loneliness, inequity, and division, I see the cure in part today in all of you, right? In all of you and our global library network and our partners as well in creating library spaces and services that empower community and connection. I thank you for your vital work, all library workers and our partners in South Korea. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the great presentation. 마리아 맥컬리 관장님의
So that was the presentation from director, from the Maria McCauley. So she mentioned about the role of the public libraries, and she also mentioned about the cases of America.
your seats. 네, 잠시 후에 또 토론회 시간에서 다시 한번
Later on, we will hear more about America's case in the panel discussion session. Next, we will hear a presentation titled Combating Loneliness and Social Isolation Through Libraries. The speaker is Professor Andrea Wickfield, Director of the Center for Loneliness Studies and faculty member at the University of Sheffield, UK. Professor is joining us online for this forum, and our presentation has been pre-recorded. Now, in the video, there's the Korean subtitles, so without the help of the receiver, you can just enjoy the video, so let's watch it together.
Hi everyone, I'm Andrea Wigfield. I'm a professor at Sheffield Hallam University. It's a great privilege to be talking to you today. I'm really sorry that I couldn't be there in person. I'm going to be talking about how we address loneliness through libraries. So I just wanted to talk a bit about myself first. So I'm a professor at Sheffield Hallam University. I'm director of the Centre for Loneliness Studies, and I'm also co-director of the Campaign to End Loneliness. I have about 10 to 15 years experience in loneliness research. I look primarily at the wider social health and determinants of loneliness, and I go beyond looking at the individual and look at how places and spaces can support social connection. I carry out research to understand why people are lonely, the implications of loneliness, but also to evaluate programmes that are designed to reduce loneliness. So, in terms of the Centre for Loneliness Studies, I'll just tell you briefly about our mission. We are an interdisciplinary research centre and we aim to be at the forefront of world leading research in this area. We try and ensure that all our research is informed by policy and practice, and that the findings of our research then inform policy and practice in turn. And we look at loneliness and social relationships across the life course, so we're not interested in any one particular age group. We like to think we've got quite a unique position on loneliness here at the Centre for Loneliness Studies. So, as I've mentioned, we want to move beyond looking at the individual and how the individual connects to other people, but to look at the wider societal influences on that process and the wider societal solutions to loneliness as well. We think about loneliness in terms of meaningful relationships, and I'll talk about that in a bit more detail shortly. But by that, I'm talking about meaningful relationships with other people, meaningful relationships with yourself, and meaningful relationships with places and spaces. So that concept of having a sense of belonging. We take a multidisciplinary approach to loneliness, as I mentioned, so we involve researchers and academics from all disciplines, from health to sociology, to psychology, to sport, to architecture, to education. And most of our research is co-created, so we try and bring in the people with lived experience of loneliness to help design and carry out some of our research. And we usually use mixed methods approach, so we try and incorporate both qualitative and quantitative research methods. So that's the Centre for Loneliness Studies. I'll just talk very briefly about the Campaign to End Loneliness as well. So I'm co-director of the Campaign to End Loneliness. The campaign was set up in around 2011 of a group, a coalition of charities who wanted to try and reduce loneliness and prevent people from having the adverse mental and physical health conditions that we know chronic loneliness can bring. The campaign is a world-leading organisation. You know, we're looked upon in other countries as a model of good practice. And we moved the campaign over to Sheffield Hallam University last May because it ran out of funding. So the way the campaign and the centre works is the Centre for Loneliness Studies carries out the research, and then we use the campaign to disseminate our findings and to try and make policy change and to influence politicians and practitioners. The campaign contributed to the establishment of the first Minister for Loneliness in the UK back in 2018, and was also instrumental in developing the UK's first loneliness strategy. And the campaign has an advisory group of stakeholders from all over the country, from different sectors, who are working with loneliness to help us shape the work that we do. We've just got a contract from DCMS, the Department for Culture, Media and Sport, to run something called the Tackling Loneliness Hub. I've put the link in there. Anyone can join. We have over 1,000 members who are primarily organisations which are supporting people who are lonely. And there's lots of networking opportunities and also scope for linking in with some of our webinars and blogs. So, having said who I am and what we do at our centre, I just want to now talk a bit about the background to what loneliness and social isolation is and how they're defined. So we know that loneliness is a subjective, unwelcome, negative feeling when you have a loss or lack of companionship. It often happens when there's a mismatch between the types of relationships that you want and those that you have. And often you can feel lonely if you feel that your relationships are worse than those of your peers. Now, in contrast, social isolation is an objective measure of a minimal number of contacts with other people in any one given period of time. And I think it's really important to differentiate between loneliness and social isolation. And we have these definitions, but quite often academics, policymakers, and practitioners and the general public tend to mix them up. But in terms of their health implications, there are some differences there. So, who's at risk of loneliness? I've identified 4 key influences in terms of who's at risk of loneliness. So, firstly, personal characteristics. So, this includes age. We know that young adults between the ages of 16 and 24 are more likely to be lonely than any other group in society. We also know that older people are at risk of loneliness. There are then other groups like people with disabilities, people with health conditions, ethnic minority populations, LGBTQIA+. And so those kinds of personal characteristics are one grouping of who to determine whether you might be more at risk of loneliness than other people. Second characteristics are personal circumstances. So this is things like whether you've got access to a car or the internet, what your living arrangements are, if you live alone or if you live with other people, if you have a caring role. So for example, if you care for others, whether that's children or older people or people with other health conditions. And then the third set of factors are around health conditions. So we know that if you have long-term health conditions, if you have mental health issues, or maybe sensory impairment, they all determine the extent to which you might be at risk of loneliness. And the final group of characteristics are around locality profile. So we know that the design of your neighbourhoods, community infrastructure, the layout of streets, or your housing design, whether you're in high-rise or low-rise accommodation, perception of crime, whether you feel safe in your surrounding area, how good the public transport is, whether there are green spaces, all those things affect how lonely you might feel and whether you can get a sense of belonging to that place, but also if you can connect with other people in your locality. Now, the second group of factors determining who's at risk of loneliness are around transitory life events. And we know that these can happen at any point in your life, from birth to death. So examples include bereavement, if your children leave home, the so-called empty nest syndrome, changed caring role, so whether you maybe start to become a carer or whether you cease to become a carer, divorce and separation, migration, moving home, being diagnosed with a new health condition, retirement, maybe moving schools or going to school for the first time. So all these different factors that happen in our lives can be prompts to trigger loneliness. And what we know is that those triggers of that temporary loneliness are a normal part of being a human being. They're signals to us that we need to reach out to other people. Just like being thirsty is a signal to get a drink, these transitory life events might create a trigger that we feel lonely, and it's a sign to us to reach out to other people. But actually, if we don't get out of that temporary loneliness and it lasts for a long period of time, the loneliness can become chronic and it can last for a long time and it can be experienced frequently on a daily basis. And we know that once you start experiencing chronic loneliness, that can lead to mental and health implications. So, why does loneliness matter? For precisely those reasons, because if we get chronic loneliness, we're more likely to have mental and health implications. That has a knock-on effect to the health and social care system and to the wider economy. So in terms of mental health, we know that there's a link between loneliness and depression, anxiety, cognitive decline, and reduced psychological well-being. We also know there are physical health implications of being chronically lonely. So it can lead to a higher risk of premature mortality. You'll have seen the data around loneliness being equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. We also know that it can lead to cardiovascular disease. Now, because of all that, there are also healthcare costs and implications. So we know that people who are lonely are more likely to use medication, they're more likely to visit the GP frequently, and that has a cost consequence for our healthcare system. And then finally, lost productivity. So we know that workplace loneliness leads to increased absenteeism, greater labour turnover, and reduced productivity by the individual who might feel lonely. So there's a figure that is estimated that 154 US dollars per person, I think that is, in terms of absenteeism and productivity loss. But if we think about in the UK, we know that £2.5 billion is the cost to employers every year in lost productivity due to loneliness. So I mentioned before that the way we look at loneliness is to look at meaningful relationships. And I've just written a book last year called Loneliness for Dummies, which I've put the link in there. And the whole book is dedicated towards different types of loneliness amongst different population groups and how some sort of simple tips on how you may be able to reduce the impact of loneliness on you or become more resilient to being lonely. Throughout that book, I really focus on looking at meaningful relationships in different aspects of our lives. So looking at meaningful relationships with other people. We know that you can have many contacts, many social contacts, but if they're at a superficial level, then they're less likely to have an impact on your feelings of loneliness. But you might just have one strong relationship, which has a meaningful relationship with another person, and that is able to get you out of feeling lonely. The second factor is looking at the meaningful relationship you have with yourself. We know that if you become chronically lonely, you start to perceive other people's attitudes towards you in a negative light. So you might walk down the street and someone might smile at you, but you might see that in a negative way. And then you might start not looking at people as you walk down the street. And so then that cycle of loneliness tends to get exaggerated. And then you start to perceive yourself in a negative light. So it's really important that we encourage people to have a meaningful relationship with themselves and to be positive about themselves. And the final meaningful relationship that we look at is with place. So that idea of a sense of belonging. And you can have meaningful relationships with various places. You can have a sense of belonging to a park, to a mountain, to a lake, to a football stadium, to maybe a place of worship. And we know that you can be, if you have a meaningful relationship and a sense of belonging to a particular place, you can be there on your own, you can enjoy the solitude, and you might not feel lonely. So I think what we really see in terms of loneliness is if we can promote meaningful relationships at all three levels, that is sort of the best antidote you can get to feeling lonely. We can't always get it at all three levels, but we can make an attempt to do so. But at least one of those levels you need really to feel connected. And I just wanted to talk a bit about some of the types of interventions that are helpful for loneliness. So I've put on there the WHO World Health Organization database of interventions for reducing social isolation and loneliness. It's a really good resource and it gives you a whole range of papers and articles and evaluations of interventions that have been designed to reduce loneliness. So I've just picked out a few for each of these areas. So firstly, in terms of connecting with yourself, there's some evidence, quite strong evidence actually, that mindfulness can be useful in managing loneliness, especially there's a study that looks at young adults and shows that if young people engage in mindfulness, they're better able to manage the feelings of loneliness, and that enables them to feel better equipped and more resilient to loneliness in the future. In terms of effective evaluations for connecting with others, there are lots of these. Again, on the same WHO database, you can see some examples. There are lots around befriending, so that's where you get individual support, one-to-one, and also group-based activities which bring like-minded people together through things like sports, arts, and music. An example of one good project is something called Project Artisan, which was based in Singapore. This is an intergenerational arts-based activity where they got young people and older people together in a museum to carry out art-based activities on a weekly basis. And it was a clinical trial, so they compared with a control group, and that showed that those who were in the intervention group who were engaging in these intergenerational activities had a reduction in loneliness, felt more satisfied with their life, and also had higher quality of life. And then finally, some examples from, again, around how we might connect with place. So there's some good examples worldwide of intergenerational living through co-housing and how that can lead to a reduction in loneliness, where you may be within a scheme, you have your individual living accommodation, but also you have communal areas for all different ages, bringing them together. And these communal areas can encourage shared gardening, cooking, play, eating, and that helps to create interconnections between generations and between people. There's also the 15-minute city, which you'll have seen lots about, and there are various cities like Paris, Barcelona, Vancouver trying this out. The idea is that you have everything you need within a 15-minute walk, bike or public transport ride. And the idea there is that you get more connected to your local neighbourhood and your local community, and it leads to a stronger community ties and better for promotion social interaction. I don't think there are at the moment any robust evaluations of that, but hopefully there will be in the future. And so finally then I want to talk about libraries and how libraries can support meaningful relationships. I think they're a really good source of community infrastructure, and they can provide meaningful relationships across all the 3 different areas that I've spoken about. So they can promote a meaningful relationship with yourself if they offer a welcoming venue where you can be yourself and you feel at ease there. They can help you create a meaningful relationship with other people because they offer a place for social interaction, a place to meet, maybe where there are some group-based interventions and activities going on. And also they offer a source of meaningful relationships with place, so they can facilitate a sense of belonging. If you visit the library frequently, you feel comfortable there, you occasionally meet people that you've seen before, you can feel a sense of belonging to that library and then as a knock-on effect to that community. I'm just going to give you a sort of mini case study really of a project in England called Libraries Connected, which is all about reducing chronic loneliness through libraries. So this project had 2.5 million funding from Arts Council England. It supported 26 libraries across England, primarily in areas of deprivation. And the idea was to target people in the area who were chronically lonely and try and engage them in the library's activities. It also focused on recruiting volunteers to work with people who are lonely. So there was a sort of mutual impact in terms of benefiting the volunteers, but also benefiting the users as well. And just going to play you now a short video which talks about the role of volunteering in libraries and how useful volunteering is, and that it's not just focused on reading books, but it's much wider than that.
I'd assume that being a library volunteer would be complicated.
It sounds nice, but I don't think I would learn any skills doing it.
It's just tidying books up, isn't it?
If you're not sure whether volunteering for libraries is for you, it's time to think again.
Volunteering at the library has given me a lot more confidence than I used to have. It's not just about volunteering, it's meeting people, getting new skills.
I'm producing a radio station from here because the volunteering opportunities that you can see and actually join in are amazing.
I've always used libraries but never worked in one, and it's a dream come true.
After being in a coma, the library has given me the chance to sort of make myself again, to get back into work. I feel like my life's coming back.
When volunteers first step into the library, they'll actually be asked what they do want to volunteer as.
And then say, what is it you want to do? Your digital skills. Most of our volunteers have become job ready.
So really, we look at what the library can do for the community as much as what the community can do for the library.
If you're considering volunteering, I think you'll be very, very rewarded.
I presumed that libraries were all about books, and they certainly are not.
You heard the old saying, is your glass half empty or half full? Well, I say neither. Mine's full all the time.
If you're interested in volunteering for a library, get in touch with your local branch today.
And then I just want to provide you with 2 examples of projects within that Libraries Connected study, out of all the libraries that were supported, the 26 libraries that were supported. So the first one targeted older people through age-friendly libraries in Middlesbrough, which is based in the north of England. So the idea of this project was really to focus on older people aged 50 plus who live in Middlesbrough and help access volunteering opportunities and connect them to other people. So one of the initiatives that they carried out in Middlesbrough, which worked really well, was on World Book Day, and they took children from 6 local primary schools into local care homes where older people were residents. The children took in the favourite book and then they read that to the older person. And you can see here some of the feedback was really positive. So the children and the older people both benefited by connecting with each other, but also through this meaningful activity, which was based around reading. So one person whose mother was in the care home said, "I've never seen my mother so engaged since she'd had a stroke." And then another person said, who was talking about a resident in the care home, said that she'd never seen a resident so happy and animated. And then the second project I just want to tell you briefly about is something called the Chatty Cafe at Bideford's Library Service, and that's in the south of England in Devon. So this activity was based on providing a cafe with a safe space for people to meet once a week. And I've got some quotes here from the people that used it. So there was an older man who used the service called Will. He attends regularly the Chatty Cafe, and he says it's helped him ease his loneliness and it's improved his well-being. There's another younger person called Cindy who's 33. She's a mum. She says she suffers with mental health issues and feels that she can go to the Chatty Cafe no matter what. Doesn't matter what's going on. There's always someone to listen to her if she needs to talk. And then there's Joyce. Joyce is a volunteer with Chatty Cafe. She's been volunteering for over a year. She helps set up the tables and clear away after the cafe. She says, "My husband died 2 years ago. Around the same time, my son moved away, and I was sat on my own in my flat. I'm learning to be on my own, which is very hard. I'm the youngest of 13 children and have always had family around me, so it's been difficult. But coming to the Chatty Cafe has been absolutely brilliant." She says, better than a bag of gold. And so I just want to finally summarise the role that I think libraries can play in tackling loneliness. So I think the first thing is that libraries are more than just locations for reading books, which sometimes people think. Libraries can play a central role in connecting communities together. But I think, especially in the UK at the moment, it's important to raise awareness about the role that libraries can play to ensure that they continue to be an important resource in our communities and neighbourhoods. Libraries can also create safe spaces where people can have open dialogue, they can talk to each other about their experiences of loneliness, but also they can use those places as ways in which they can connect to other people. Local libraries and services tend to have a deep understanding of their local community, And so they're a really good opportunity to tackle issues like social isolation, like loneliness, and like a lack of access to resources. And I think using volunteers in libraries is really helpful. It benefits the volunteers and the users of the service, and it helps strengthen community bonds and tackle loneliness. And then finally, I think because libraries are an established presence, they tend to be a trusted service that can enable a consistent and long-term engagement in that establishment by the community members. So I've always got lots more to say about loneliness because it's a bit of a passion of mine, but I hope you've enjoyed that very quick talk around loneliness, social isolation and the role that libraries can play. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll be available live by link, I hope, to answer questions. Thank you.
네, 박수 부탁드립니다.
Please give her a warm round of applause. That was the presentation by Director Andrea Wickfield. Later in the panel discussion session, we will listen more from Ms. Wickfield. Now, loneliness is not merely a personal emotional issue, but a complex and structural phenomenon that affects public health and social cohesion. In this presentation, we explore the key causes and risk factors of loneliness from multiple perspectives. It highlighted how libraries can serve as critical hubs for public policy by fostering community-based social networks. We hope that moving forward, libraries will play a more systematic and sustainable role in alignment with national strategies and community-based policies aimed at alleviating loneliness. Our final thematic presentation is titled Social Inclusion and the Role of Libraries in Our Time. The presentation will be delivered by Professor Deok Hyun-jang, Professor of Library and Information Science at Busan National University. Please welcome him with a big round of applause. Please give him a big hand. Good afternoon, everyone. How much time is allocated for me? Yes, I think I need to be a bit fast to deliver my presentation. So I have 25 slides, but I will mainly touch upon important factors. So my topic is social inclusion, the role of libraries in the modern era. Now, as you know, inclusion was a really important keyword during the third educational innovation, and once again, the inclusion is becoming an important topic nowadays. So first of all, I'm going to talk about why inclusion matters. We often say this term DEI when we talk about inclusion, such as these are the words like ESG, and likewise DEI is a very widespread, renowned terms. It means diversity, equity, and inclusion. As you can see here on the slide, considering the race, gender, age, disability, and sexual orientation, we have to ensure diversity. As for equity, it's the spirit that we should not discriminate other people, and inclusion is building such equal and diverse environment. Now, when it comes to diversity and inclusion, it feels like that those terms have minimum meanings or implications to our society. But as I look through several thesis papers, our society tends to focus more on numbers and measurings. Now, diversity and inclusion is a must. As we ensure more diversity and inclusion, we can raise our competing edge in the society, and those were mentioned in various media journals. In particular, the Global 500 companies chose DEI as an important index, and as this inclusion and diversity goes up, then it has been known that the productivity and effectiveness of a company will also increase. So from the perspective of modern society, where numbers and indicators are important, DEI is also essential. And recently, there has been some concerns regarding DEI. As you all know, the DEI stems from SDG. As you all know, SDG is a 17 goal launched by the United Nations in 2017. And SDG is closely linked to the DEI, and I believe libraries and publication industry highly reflects DEI spirits. So as you know, major publication companies consider the diversity of genders when it comes to picking their executive members. So the libraries and the publishers also highly value DEI. The thing is, recently, especially circling around America, there has been many problems regarding DEI that many people believe that DEI is getting eroded from the society. Of course, in the previous administration of the US, the affirmative action was abolished. That is, giving opportunities to the racial minorities, and it was judged unconstitutional in the federal Supreme Court in the US. And after Donald Trump took the office, DEI policy is now fading away. And as we have seen in various media press, there was an announcement from the Trump government that they will not support the companies that values DEI. So here you can see the headlines that many people are protesting to the government's decision on abolishing the DEI spirit. And in fact, if you look at the US companies, Apple, the US government requested Apple to abolish and ban DEI. However, Apple rejected this. So Apple decided to keep its diversity policies, and again, the government criticized heavily of Apple for maintaining DEI. So there were various issues regarding the DEI. Nevertheless, Asian companies have been claiming that they will maintain DEI. So you can see there are some social chaos centering around DEI. What about South Korea? I believe it was year 2023. And there were major events regarding diversity. In each college, there was a diversity committee being established. So at the time, 6 universities across the nation created a diversity committee, building organizations. And as you can see here on the slide, universities like Korean University and KAIST, as well as my university, the Busan National University, was selected as the 6th member, and I was the chair of the diversity committee of the Busan National University at the time. Now, those universities also launched and published the diversity report. So, for example, it evaluated the number of students on their diverse backgrounds. They also considered the number of female faculty members within the universities, and also they evaluated the university's diversity performance by creating indicators. And the result of that report was announced during the Week of Diversity. And it was organized by the Culture and Arts Commission, and also the lawmaker Chun Young-guk is the chairman of this diversity committee. And here on the very bottom, it's based on the Act on the Protection and Promotion of Cultural Diversity, which means it is protected by law. So I hope that more organizations would participate in Korea's diversity consultative body and the university's diversity committee. Now let's move on to the inclusion of library. Well, originally, library has high inclusiveness. Historically speaking, library had high inclusion, and it was actually established to share information. And the basic spirit is to get rid of discrimination and ensure equity, such as the freedom of expression, and also to reflect the voice of the social minorities. So, library was initially established to embrace all different voices. And recently, there was a book published named Nexus by Yuval Harari. And if you read this book, you can grasp ideas about diversity. So because I'm an expert, I guess I would have to introduce this book briefly. So if you have any interest, please do read this book. And if you have ever read this book, you know that Yuval Harari is gay. He has a male partner. However, the fact that he is gay does not influence his insights or his ideas. I think this is one of the aspects of inclusion. Now, the UN SDG agenda is closely related to libraries. So in 2017, when SDG was first announced, the IFLA cooperated closely with the United Nations to create the agendas, and there is the agenda for IFLA, and those are 17 agendas customized to libraries' goals. And these 17 library agendas were adopted in Busan National University as well. So that's why our university created this BK projects. So right now, 3 universities are participating in this BK research group, along with Gyeongbuk National University and Yonsei University. And those 2 colleges are operating this by BK research team, which are smaller in size. However, for Busan National Universities, we are operating this as BK Research Group, and we have a total of 17 goals. And these goals imply our missions and our directions in education. Now, for example, if there is this goal of eradicating poverty in the UN SDG, then the Department of Library and Information Science of Busan National University study on how to eradicate poverty. And second goal of UN SDG is food security and sustainable agriculture. Then for Busan National University, then we will be able to research about regional agriculture system and seafood industry and marine industry. So those are the agendas that we have created by taking into reference of the UN SDGs. And also, if you look at the goal number 10, it says alleviating inequality among nations. And as an expert in library and information science, we can provide service platforms and analyze information demanded by the disabled, the multicultural, families, and the elderly, or LGBTQ groups. Likewise, we've been running this project for several years. By that, we will be able to build basis for democracy and strengthening the power of community and ensuring sustainable growth. This is the project that we've been running so far. As you can see, I think we can extract various tasks for libraries by taking into reference of the UN SDG. And let me move on to the cases of other countries. And one of them is Japan. I'm not sure if you guys visited this place. If you go to Gifu province of Japan, there is this library called Minnanomori, and it's also known as Media Cosmos. On the very left, you can see the photo. If you visit that library, there is each cosmos, and for each cosmos, the books are allocated based on their topics. Now, there are 2 of them. One is located at the opposite of the climate office. And if you go there, the first floor is not a library, only the second floor is library. Now, if you go to the first floor of this library, all of those books are related to the climate issues. So on the first floor, the staffs who work in the first floor are the experts in climate change and issues, and those working in the second floor are librarians. So when I first heard that it would become a public library, but when I visited Gifu province of Japan, I realized that this could be another solution for the direction of libraries. Now, if you look at the second photo, that is the Kuala Lumpur Library in Malaysia. Now, this color resembles the 17 SDG goals, and this is the kids center in the library. So, by presenting the SDG goals, children will be exposed to those goals and learn more about those SDG goals. Because we're running out of time, I'll be brief. If you look at the very right photo, that is the multi-complex space called In and Out, located in Busan. The mayor of Busan is trying to make Busan as a 15-minute city, and I think this space resembles that spirit. Now, personally, In and Out space has won an award in the SDG ceremony. Now, what are the tasks? First, I think is locality. We often say it as DINL. Along with South Korea, many countries highly value diversity and inclusion. On top of that, if we think about the rural areas, I think they are the most isolated region in South Korea. So when we looked at the diversity report, it seems that locality is one of the most important values. Now, when it comes to locality, it's not about locating at the center or at the periphery. But when you think about the local regions, that is, we tend to believe that if something is located at the center, then it seems as important. But if something is marginalized or located at the peripheral areas, then we tend to think it's trivial. And those belief is something that back up our idea that we have discrimination against rural areas. And on the bottom, you can see the photo of libraries located at the Kanazawa province of Japan. But as you can see, all these libraries located overseas are not at the city center. They are located at the rural regions. Likewise, I think locality is an important indicator that reflects the diversity of libraries. Next is the non-standard users. Now, I think the term standard users could be somewhat discriminatory. Now, typically, when you think about the users of the library, those are the adults in their 20s and 30s. But when it comes to non-standard users, I think those will be the children, like Dr. Macaulay mentioned. Also, there could be elderly and multicultural families. Now, on the bottom, you can see the photo of the library located in Ishikawa province. On the top of the library, you can see this net where children can walk across the ceilings. And the second photo is the library in France, in Lyon. And France had this issue of encouraging the teenagers to come to the library. So that's why the museum in the library in France decided to create and design their libraries with the concept of media arts and technology to induce more teenagers to visit the library. It seems I only have 5 minutes left. Now, on the right, you can see this photo of another library in France. They collect paintings and drawings of the local artists, and they also borrow these paintings to the local residents so that they can hang up these paintings in their home for 3 months, and then they have to return them to the library. Now, next is potential user. So non-standard users are those who have less attention to libraries, but when it comes to a potential user, those are the people who do not use library right now, but who could become a potential visitor later on. So on the right, you can see the photos of various people. So such as people in the LGBT community, or those who have criminal record, or those who have criminal record, or the people who are on the streets, the beggars. Those people are actually not the typical users who visit libraries, but these people could also become a potential user. So on the bottom, you can see here that we should not judge a book by its cover. Likewise, we shouldn't judge others depending on their background. And the fourth is that we should not be ignorant about the minorities' opinions. Earlier, I mentioned the case of library in Minnanomori in Japan. So on the first floor of this Gyu Province Library, you can see people gather together to share information. And on the right, you can see the public officials of the City Hall come together to bring ideas and insights. Now, next is my suggestion. So there are several suggestions that I would like to make. First, we have to create a collection reflecting inclusivity. So there are some policies regarding collection of the library, and I think we have to reflect the inclusiveness. Now, I've taken into reference of the overseas policies regarding creating a collection in the library, and many of them actually reflected the inclusiveness indicators. And libraries in other countries actually take into consideration of the inclusivity when they create a collection. Second is strengthening service development and the role of librarians. There should also be programs for educating the users and also raising the awareness on multicultural families and gender sensibility, and also building space for the senior citizens. And also there should be a DEI training for the librarian staffs. And also by reflecting the feedbacks of the users, there should be an improvement in the overall library service. And third, libraries should also build partnerships with other institutions. So as for Korean Library Association, they should also participate with other consultative bodies to build partnerships. And earlier, I mentioned about the DEI education program for the library staffs. And already the Korean Library is doing those kind of skill programs. And for the university libraries, they already have their own association, so they should also participate in these efforts. And the public libraries should also build partnerships with local and regional institutions. And another suggestion that I would like to make is that we have to come up with a specific indicator or index. This is something that we're already doing right now. So if you look at the evaluations of the public library, I think those indicators should also reflect diversity. So that's why I think we need to come up with a library inclusivity index. And this is something that needs more research. We have to come up with an index that all libraries could take reference to. And something that we can think of is the World University Evaluation Sustainable Indicator. We have two of them. One is the Times Higher Education Impact Rankings, and the second is QS World University Rankings. Now, the THE has impact rankings, and as for the QS rankings, it has sustainability rankings. So apart from its original World University Evaluation, they have these rankings. So it's quite small, but they have this kind of indicators and index. It's not about the research volume of those universities, but how those universities are putting contributions and efforts to address climate change. So when we build libraries or policies, I think we should also take into consideration of these factors. Now, because I'm running out of time, I was really quick with my presentation, but if you have any further questions, we'll use the Q&A session. Thank you.
네, 대단히 감사합니다.
Thank you very much for your insightful presentation. I think he tried his best to provide as much information as possible within the given time. Diversity and inclusion are no longer optional for libraries. They are essential responsibilities. Through his presentation, we were reminded that libraries are not merely repositories of information, but living platforms that amplify and connect voices of marginalized people. So we have heard the keynote speech and the 3 thematic presentations. We are going to take about 10-minute break, and then the discussion, it will be followed by the discussion. Thank you. the desired directions of the libraries in the future. Now this is discussion time. We are going to have intensive discussion with those speakers. First, let me briefly introduce you the moderator for the discussion, Professor Won-sik Shim from the Department of Library and Information Science at Seongkyunkwan University, who is also a member of the 8th Presidential Committee on National Libraries. Professor Shim, please take your seat. And I also would like to invite Professor Sundur Chung to the stage. And the director Maria McCauley. And Professor Tok Hyun Chang. And last but not least, Professor Andrea Wickfield, who presented earlier online. He will be joining us on screen for this session.
Now joining us online. So let's connecting. Okay, Dr. Wickfield, can you hear us well?
I can hear you.
Thank you very much. We're now online. 자, 그럼 이제 심원숙 교수님께 말씀을
Now let me hand over the mic to Professor Shim, the moderator. Hello, everyone. It's great to see you. Thank you very much for staying with us until this time. So we have 4 speakers. First, this question goes to Professor Chung, Sundur Chung. Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. And I realized that Korea has a serious loneliness and social isolation. Our level of loneliness was higher than the UK. And the aged group, they are at high risk of social isolation. And I think the libraries can serve its role to mitigate this issue, social isolation of the elderly. However, I think that there can be some barriers regarding using library services. How can libraries work to reduce or remove those barriers to improve accessibility? Okay, the barriers. You may think of the physical and psychological barriers in accessing libraries. First, physical side. Of course, those libraries should be close to your home. Easy physical access will be required. And psychologically, now I am socially isolated in the community. And when I visit the library, whether the library I can get can be used for care, for my mental care or the psychological care. These are the 2 barriers, I think. Then, to facilitate use of libraries by use, that we should remove those 2 types of the barriers. I think these days we are seeing less barriers, physical barriers, because each district, each small town, an increasing number of those small towns have libraries. In some cases, those small libraries are located within a community center. For instance, Armin Library that I mentioned in my presentation. Yes, it is located inside a welfare center. So there are a wide range of the library types accessible by use. And anonymity is also important for use. If they can easily access those places and get some help, and then there will be no further psychological barrier. So you mentioned the 2 sides. First, the physical barriers. Actually, we managed to reduce certain barriers to a certain level. However, psychological barriers in accessing libraries, we should think more and work on to lower those psychological barriers. In that sense, we first think of the characteristics of the users. For instance, the youth, the young users. My second question is, now local libraries, they collaborate with the local organizations or community resources to mitigate the social isolation. There are some efforts going on. then we will need a sustainable approach regarding these efforts. What do you think of this point? Okay, the welfare side would like to provide more collaborative network, and then to that end, we already think of or review the community resources. But in many cases, those parties, they actually miss the libraries, the roles of libraries. We do not sometimes, in many cases, think of the possibilities or the roles of libraries. So Ministry of Welfare or the Ministry of Culture, I think they can collaborate to include libraries in this regard. Without such kind of approach, I think we will be only able to come up with a kind of a one-time solution to alleviate some social isolations. So relevant ministries and organizations should work together. So then, in that sense, I think this is very meaningful occasion because we have this time with you, this partnership. We take it for granted. However, we should be more proactive in making partnership among the government organizations as well.
I'd like to turn to Dr. Maria Macaulay. Thank you so much for coming to Korea and giving a talk. The first question for you is, libraries are already working with many experts, professionals in many different fields. And Korea is already an ultra-aging society. That means libraries must interact with others, particularly in social welfare. You already mentioned a little bit of this, but do you have any idea about how the collaboration between the libraries and welfare experts should work?
Yeah, thank you so much.
You can use the microphone.
Thank you so much. So, yes, we work with, in the city of Cambridge, the Department of Human Services, and we also, and within Human Services, they have a senior center. They have housing for seniors. We also work with the Cambridge Housing Authority, which has low-income housing across the city. And so our senior services librarian also works with our facilities people who do deliveries. So we do home deliveries of books and resources to many people in Cambridge. And then part of this work is also to do book clubs and other programs with these community members. And then, of course, the programming within the library. But it's really facilitated through that community partnership to make sure that all parties are working together, that even, for example, doing drops, that they know the schedule, they know who's coming out. With the book clubs, is there going to be the community room available at the senior center? So it's a lot of coordination that our adult services librarian who focuses on senior services has to do. And she organizes herself approximately 30 programs a month. She's really committed and very busy.
That's very remarkable. Actually, one key takeaway from your response is that libraries, we have our own language. And social welfare area will have their own language. Sometimes we may not be able to understand each other because we speak a little bit of different languages. So having someone who has a background in social welfare can make a really big difference because she can, or he can, speak the language that with the people who work in that space.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks. And she also works, of course, with the social workers in the city and in the library as well.
Sure. Let's talk about your own library, Cambridge Public Library. You already mentioned a little bit about this, but can you give us some examples of community programs that aim to bridge cultural, economic, or generation gap in the community?
Yeah, thank you. I was thinking about this one program that we did, and that this partnership continues. So there is a nonprofit organization called the Black History Project in Cambridge that documents and raises the visibility of Black community members, historical and current. And then we, as you know, we work with different teaching artists. One of our teaching artists, her name is Elisa Hamilton, and she and the Arts Commission and the library and the Black History Project, and our archivist was a key part of this. They all collaborated together where she took an old jukebox and she created, she worked on oral history projects with the Black History Project and created a place, an art installation where you could press and listen to the stories of 100 mostly Black community members. And over 50% of those oral histories were recorded at the Cambridge Public Library in our archives area. And then with the Arts Commission, it's the jukebox is on permanent display at another cultural nonprofit in the city. And you can go in, and the artist also made like record images of each person's face. So it was a really, I think, creative way to honor the Black community and all of our partners.
Wonderful. I have many more questions, but I'd like to give a chance to Dr. Andrea Wickfield, who is, what's the time there?
Not too bad. It's 8:45 in the morning.
Okay, it's not too bad. Okay.
It's not too bad now, thank you.
Thank you for the fascinating presentation. You mentioned 3 kinds of connections that libraries can facilitate: connecting with oneself, connecting with others, and connecting with space, place. When designing library programs, how can we strike a balance between these 3 types of connections? Or is it really necessary to keep such a balance?
I think, to be honest, I think the question is what is the intervention in the library service designed to do, and who are they trying to reach in terms of the intervention? What are the objectives? So if, for example, you're trying to reach people who might have experienced temporary loneliness, like I mentioned in my presentation, bereavement or maybe retirement, for example, then if that's a transitory loneliness, I think it would be better. You'd be better placed focusing on connecting with other people, so developing that meaningful relationship with other people, and obviously using the library then as a place where you might create a sense of belonging. So the balance would really be between those 2 things. I think if we're thinking about people who are more chronically lonely, so as I mentioned in my presentation, that's been lonely often, frequently, for a long period of time, then we know that leads to neurological changes, and your perception of other people and their interaction with you changes into a more negative way. So I think in that respect, if you were targeting that group of people, then it would be more important to think about focusing on meaningful relationships with yourself and really helping those people become more confident and positive towards themselves as a first step. And then a later step would then obviously be to try and connect them to other people and to the library service itself. Because often if you're trying to reach those chronically lonely people, it's going to be very difficult as an initial step to get them to sometimes leave the home, let alone go to a library and meet other people.
Okay, thank you. So we can say that social structural factors have a significant effect on loneliness. In that regard, to what extent should government or library actions or interventions can be expanded to deal with loneliness?
Yeah, I think as I mentioned, you know, loneliness comes from the individual as well, and I spoke about those sort of personal characteristics and also individual traits and circumstances. But at the same time, the individual interacts in a wider societal structural system. So there needs to be a balance between supporting the individual, but also thinking about the way in which society is structured and designed. So I think public policy has an important role to play, and the way in which we plan and design our towns and cities and neighbourhoods, the layout of our streets, the availability of facilities like community infrastructure, including libraries, even small things like having benches so people can spend time outside and linger and have that chance opportunities to talk to people who are maybe passing by. Public transport's really important to, especially in rural areas, so they can connect to places and meet other people. So I think that public policy has a big role to play, and I would say that the way I would see this going forward is that any policies that may well have an influence on people's social connections should start thinking about how they can incorporate some of those positive social connections into those policies. So an example in the UK at the moment is the new government's announced 1.5 million houses to be built, new homes. So I would argue that when those new homes are being built, thinking about what they look like, how are they designed, how will they encourage different groups to interconnect with each other, intergenerational connection, but also other groups as well, and how will they be designed in a way that can facilitate maximum interaction and reduce loneliness. So we know that simple design, some simple tweaking to the design of houses is really important for social connection. So for example, if windows are facing the windows of the houses next door, so you actually get a glimpse of the neighbour, that can help. We know that if you've got a driveway with a garage on and the car's parked in there, you may well go into your home, go straight into the car, leave and never see the neighbours. So thinking about the ways in which you can encourage interaction. It may even be simple things like, where do you put your wheelie bin? So in the UK we have bins that we take out on a weekly basis. That's always a good opportunity because all the neighbours are coming out on that same day. So thinking about where are those bins stored, so you can have that chance interaction with other people. So I think public policy has a really important role to play, but it can do so in small ways, but throughout all the policy of government. So not just in housing, but it could be in all different areas, including libraries.
Thank you. That's very interesting. Building 1.5 million housings in the future, and thinking about designing so that people can interact with each other within groups and outside the boundaries of traditional groups. Because in Korea, when we think about building housing, it's mostly for ownership and mostly for interacting within the same social economic group. That is very refreshing. I have one more question for you because you are far away. From your experience and from your own research, what have you found to be the most difficult aspect of guiding or inviting people who feel lonely to engage in programs?
Sorry, could you repeat that last bit?
From your own experience, what is the most difficult thing of guiding or inviting people to participate, to take part in these engaging programs?
Okay, thank you. I think the first, well, there are a number of issues. The first one is identifying the most lonely people to start with. Quite often when we've developed initiatives or when we've evaluated initiatives, They're sometimes designed to reach the most lonely, the chronically lonely, and quite often we can't find those people. So because by the very nature of being lonely, it's difficult to find them because they might often remain in the house, they don't interact so much. So I think the first problem and the most difficult one is identifying the most lonely people. And then when they are identified, it's sometimes quite difficult to get them to first accept that they're lonely and also accept that they may need support or that they want support. And then even when you maybe speak to them and encourage them to think, okay, yes, I might be lonely, I might need some support, they then, as I've mentioned earlier, don't always have the confidence to access the support that's available. So I think we've learned quite a lot about this in the different evaluations that we've carried out, and there are a number of things that can be incorporated into the intervention or the initiative or the service to help this process and to help try and find these people. So the first one is not expecting people to come to you, but actually to go out and seek people who may feel lonely. So go into the communities, visit local libraries, shops, post office, walk around the streets, try and see if you can find people who are lonely. There was a really good initiative in Leeds in the north of England where they had kind of link workers who were looking in neighbourhoods for houses where people might be social isolated and may not be leaving. So they were looking, for example, if maybe the curtains were remaining closed frequently, the bins hadn't been put out, the gardens weren't kept very well. And then they put a leaflet through the door then of those houses where people may well be in there and be isolated, with some basic information and talking about what support services are available. So that was one way in which sort of they helped try and reach those people. I think another thing that's worked quite well is having link workers. So when you have identified the person who's lonely and they then have said that, yes, I want some support, but I don't have confidence to get that support, it's having a link worker to even accompany the person to the initiative, in maybe for once or maybe a few times until they feel more confident. So the British Red Cross had something called community connectors, and those were individuals who worked in neighbourhoods and really got to know the local community and provided that kind of hand-holding support. And then I think just there are lots of things that we've done, but the last thing I think that's really important is language, and you mentioned language just briefly a minute ago. But thinking about the language that we use and the marketing of the initiatives, although I think it's really important to talk about loneliness, so we start overcoming the stigma of loneliness. At the same time, sometimes it's not the best thing to use if we're trying to encourage people who are lonely onto programs. So we need to think about the language we use and sometimes using more positive language when we're trying to encourage people onto programs of support.
Thank you. The first step in the direction is the identification of people who are in need. Okay, let me turn to Professor Chang. I'll speak in Korean. 장 교수님. Yeah.
Yes, Professor Zhang, thank you for your insightful presentation. You emphasize the importance of strengthening inclusivity in a way that reflects local context and identity. Could you share how this can be concretely designed and implemented, ideally with reference to real-world examples or case studies? Now, actually, when it comes to locality, I think public libraries are already reflecting localities very well. And in fact, each public libraries are collecting information about those regions and local information. But by going one step further, for each region, there are projects like city regeneration projects. So, of course, the city officials are making records of this urban regeneration, but those are usually focused on community base. So when a community is disappeared, then there comes the apartment, a big apartment built fancy and grand buildings. However, in that case, the memories of the local residents are all erased. So, of course, the city recorders, those city officials who record the community information, are voluntarily trying to record this, but also libraries can do this. And second is the local libraries should closely coordinate with the local region's information. And one of the things that we can do as a local library is purchasing local books and also building partnerships with local publication companies. However, I think local public libraries should be more enthusiastic to build partnerships with local regions. Like Professor Jung mentioned, I think when it comes to the cooperation networkings, libraries are always missing. Several years ago, in Busan National University, we analyzed the networks among the multicultural community. And we realized that welfare centers, psychiatrist hospitals, and NGO organizations were building strong networkings. However, it turned out that libraries were not really strongly connected with one another. They were rather independent when it comes to support activities. So that was when I realized that libraries should share resources more actively with other libraries in other regions. So I think local public libraries should build stronger partnerships with local regional organizations. I think we should go way beyond just building small partnerships with local community centers. We also have other public programs that are being carried out in Korea, but we need more efforts. So local libraries should try to emphasize their region in terms of their locality and build stronger partnerships. Yes, thank you for your answer. Now, as I was listening to your answer, I realized that today's international forum deals with social isolation and loneliness. And today we are talking about how libraries can contribute to addressing social loneliness. On the other hand, it seems that libraries should be the target that should not be lonely, that should not be isolated. And I think the isolation of library is an issue that we have to take seriously as an expert in this field. Now, you proposed the idea of a library inclusivity index during your presentation. Now, I believe this is extremely important. Now, in your view, what are some practical approaches to quantifying such an index? How might we begin to translate inclusivity into measurable indicators? Well, that was just my suggestion. So, for example, when we evaluate library, I think we also need to reflect diversity and inclusiveness. However, those things should be, of course, reflected, but those are just my mere suggestion. And of course, diversity and inclusiveness are important elements for library. Then I believe we should make inclusiveness as a standard of indicators. And also we can make our own standards of evaluation, just like I mentioned in my presentation, like QS college evaluation or other worldwide evaluations. They have their own indicators. So likewise, maybe we can build a new indicator to measure the inclusiveness of a library. Now, I think there are many things that we can measure. And just like Professor Jung mentioned, I think when we build programs for policies, maybe we can make new plans for curating collections in the libraries, such as building indicators for the multicultural family books or social minority books. And also, we can measure our strength of partnerships with other local libraries. And we also need to think about whether we are creating books and collections centering around socially marginalized groups. So I think quantifying those indicators is not that difficult. Now, I would like to be really careful about this issue, but however, at the same time, all Korean libraries are already making measures and indicators about these standards. Yes, thank you for your answer. So that was the questions that we have prepared. Now, if there are any questions from the floor or from the comment section on the YouTube channel, we'll receive the questions. Now, if you have any questions, please raise your hand and our staff will deliver the microphone. Also, when you ask questions, please state your name and affiliate. Yes, do I have to stand up? Yes. Hello, everyone. I work in the teenager library. I would like to, and my question goes to Professor Macaulay.
So in your presentation, you said that by saying hello, okay, you can make some impact, actual changes. So libraries in the US can be a place to be welcomed, and you can also develop a sense of belongings there, sense of community there. It is a community space. How were you able to build such kind of trust? I mean, in libraries as a trusted space. The reason I'm asking this question, okay, my library is a space for teenagers, and they say they have some difficulties in finding a proper place to go. And sometimes I recommend libraries can be a good option, I mean, to visit. However, many teenagers, they are reluctant to visit libraries because they think that the libraries are some space for study or for reading books only. So teenagers, when they visit a library, sometimes there is a kind of a prejudice that teenagers make some fuss inside a library. So that prevents them, from visiting the library. However, I think that is not the case in the US. So how was it possible? To make to provide a success. To provide space for teenagers successfully.
Did you get that question? Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your work working with teens, and I've heard of your innovative library, where you are. So I would say that some of our library staff members are really great at working and welcoming teens, and others are working on it. We do things like staff development trainings about development of teenagers. We have staff who are very dedicated within the space, who are teen librarians themselves. And the teens, I think, feel welcome because it is their space. So we have staff members, and the teens have to fulfill the behavioral obligations, the rules for the space, but they can be all over that space, and they can make noise in it, and they can eat in there, and they can book study rooms as long as they follow the rules. And so it really truly is their space. There's a teen advisory board that works with staff on producing the kinds of programs that they want to see. And we have an open campus with the high school next door, so a lot of kids come over even just to eat their lunch, because it's kind of fun, right, to go to another building and eat. And they don't even eat necessarily. Some do in the teen space, but they're in the on the ground floor of the library eating. And again, I think not all, I think that some staff are very welcoming, and then some, they don't feel as comfortable maybe working with teens, and they also, just like teens have to follow the guidelines, we have to be welcoming, to all of our patrons of all ages, and that is an expectation that we also set with our staff members and help to model through training. Sometimes it's working with social workers. Sometimes it's bringing out somebody who's really good at modeling, working with teens. I think where it's hard sometimes is when there are behavioral issues. For example, we had a fight, I don't know, like 12 months ago, and it was actually a fist fight. That was a very, upsetting situation for some of our library staff members, but then we debrief, and sometimes teens get asked to leave for the day, but it's never you're permanently asked to leave. It is listen, it's not the best day for you. Can you come back tomorrow and try again? So inviting them back at the same time you're asking them, and they have to do, multiple steps to be asked to leave. Once in a while, we do have a very difficult situation where the high school is also aware of situations, and that might be working with social workers or, a whole team of people around support. I think somebody threatened our staff members violently at one point, and we did have to take measures there before they were allowed back in the building. Thanks.
네, 지금 가지고 계신 고민을 말씀해 주셔서 감사합니다.
Yes, thank you for sharing your experience. And as a member of the PR team in the library, I was able to relate to your concerns. If we have more time, maybe next time, then we'll be able to discuss more about what you mentioned. Does anyone have any additional questions? Yes, I would like to add some comments about that question. So I think you already know the answer. If you look at the website of our library, if you look at the video in the homepage, then there's the answer. Now, there's a saying that if there are 3 South Korean teenagers, everyone will freak out. But actually, that's the time where we have to intervene to those teenagers. We have to pay our interest to those teenagers. We can maybe recommend or introduce social programs for those teenagers. In that way, they will be able to visit the libraries. Yes, thank you for your comment.
Professor Wakefield, do you have anything to add to any of these questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to the idea of how we encourage teenagers to use libraries more and young people. And I know that there has been some good examples in England where the boundaries maybe between the libraries and other community spaces are not so clear. So one in Barnsley, for example, near where I live, there's a bar and a cafe which sort of moves, you can move sort of seamlessly between the bar and cafe and into the library without it feeling like you're going actually into a different space. And the close proximity of those two facilities actually encourages young people to go in, and then when they've actually ventured in, you can have you can do all the things that were mentioned earlier in terms of staff training and have specific groups for young people. So I just wanted to mention that about the sort of, I suppose it links back to my earlier points about the layout and design of libraries as well.
Thank you. 혹시 플로어에서 질문
Is there any more question from the floor? Okay, it seems that we don't have any more questions. Now with that, I would like to wrap up this session. So today we talked about the role of library for addressing social isolation and loneliness. Now, as you know, South Korea is facing issues of micro-family issues and as well as super-age society, along with digital divide. Now, the most important thing here is that all of us are somewhat exposed to isolation and loneliness throughout our lives. So We heard about the cases of the UK, which the Minister of Loneliness was nominated in 2018. And there's this line from a film that is that from the very famous movie, everyone, each man is an island, but if you look under the sea, all of them are connected together. So I think here the important thing is to build connection among people and also to recover those connection with others. I think libraries have many potentials. Everyone can easily and conveniently use libraries without any difficulties, and I think library could build a social connection where everyone can come together. So moving forward, I hope that libraries could play more active roles in connecting people and our society. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, once again, please give a big round of applause, and I would like to also express my gratitude to moderators and the panel discussion participants. Now, here we come to the very last part of our international forum. So, it was really meaningful to listen to the insightful ideas of the experts. So, going beyond the original role of library, I think library can also realize the social mission and values. The 2025 Library Day and Library Week celebrations officially begin today. So let me just give some information about the future schedules. Tomorrow, Friday, we will host the Future Library Policy Hackathon, followed by the Library Day commemoration ceremony and various outdoor programs on Saturday. In addition, on Saturday, April 18th, we will hold a policy seminar on strengthening the library ecosystem. We look forward to your continued interest in and participation in all upcoming events. This year marks the third legal commemoration of Library Day. We hope this occasion will help further promote library culture and create an environment where more people can enjoy and benefit. We also look forward to ongoing discussions and advancements that will help libraries become true centers of inclusion and communication in our society. To everyone who joined us here in person and to those who participated online, we extend our sincere gratitude. Now, here comes to the very end of the 2025 Ceremony International Forum of the Day of Library. Thank you.